What's up guys, my name is Zanprez and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today's video is kind of going to be like a part 2 type thing of the last video I posted. My last video, in case you guys haven't seen it, is a beer ranking tier list, which will be linked down in the description. Definitely go check that out before this video or after this video, either one is fine. Yeah, this is kind of just the second part. I'm going to be ranking the gifted abilities of every single one of these bees in the game, and kind of just go a little bit more into depth than I did in last video. I'm going to try to make this intro pretty short just because I know how long this video is going to be. But before we get into this video, I want to tell you guys, go check out our Discord server. It'll be linked down in the description. Come chat with me and the rest of the community. Also check out some of our merch on our Roblox group page. That will be in the description as well. I'll put some pictures of it up on the screen right now. And I also plan on doing a live stream tomorrow. So hopefully I see you there, and let's get right into this video. Alright guys, so first bee here that we are going to talk about is Basic Bee. I'm going to go in the same order that I did in my last video. Basic Bee, absolutely S tier. Probably the best gifted ability in the entire game. Times 1.2 times pollen. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. It really doesn't get much better than that. So that is totally S tier. Hands down best gifted bonus in the entire game. Next up, we're gonna go with the Bomber Bee, and the Bomber Bee is gonna go down in C tier, I'm thinking. The reason Bomber Bee is going down in C tier is its gifted bonus is plus 15% bomb pollen, and you will see that bees that have more generalized boosts on them are gonna do a little bit better. And the reason that Bomber Bee is gonna be higher up than some other bomb type bees is because this applies to all different types of the bomb pollen. So there's that. And then next up here, we're gonna to Brave Bee. Brave Bee is actually going to be A tier, and the reason for that is the gifted bonus is going to give you plus 1% bee attack. Now, the reason it's not in S tier, even though this is a great stat, is attack is kind of a situational stat. You don't always need attack, and it kind of depends on your hive. Some people are going to be an attack hive, and this would be a way better gifted ability for them, but for a normal hive, to the average player, this stat really isn't going to be that big. It will definitely help though to have it, and it is one of the better stats in the game, so it definitely will go up in A tier. Next, we're going to go with the Bumblebee. Now, Bumblebee is going to go down in D tier. Its gifted bonus is plus 25% blue bomb pollen. That's going to go below the Bomber Bee because the Bomber Bee, again, gave all types of bomb pollen, but the Bumblebee only gives blue pollen for that. So it's going to go down there, unfortunately, but we'll keep moving on down the line. Next up, Cool Bee. Cool Bee is going to definitely go up in, let's see here, I would have to say B tier. Now, the reason for this as well is it just gives plus 10% blue pollen, and just pollen in general is great. So I think this is definitely worthy of being in this spot because this bee is going to really help out blue hives especially. And then next up, we're going to have Hasty Bee. Hasty Bee, I know not a lot of people are going to like this, but I'm going to put Hasty Bee down in F tier. Now, the reason for this is its gifted ability is plus 20% player move speed. That is just not going to be very helpful to you. It, of course, does come in handy and it is convenient, but it's just, you're kind of trading off a better gifted ability to have this bee in your hive, and it could be worth it to some people. It's not always worth it though, and I just don't think that it's as important and as beneficial as a lot of these other bees on the list. So for now, it's gonna go in the F tier. Now we're gonna make a pretty big jump here, and we're gonna move this Looker Bee into S tier along with the Basic Bee, and that's because Looker Bee has a plus 50% critical power, which in my opinion is a very, very good stat, and it's only a rare bee. So if you can't, I mean, you can get a gifted rare bee a lot easier. So this is basically just a free stat that gives you plus 50% critical power. That is insanely OP. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you have one of these in almost all hives. Then next we have Rad Bee. Rad Bee is kind of the red equivalent of the Cool Bee, so we'll stick that in B tier because that gives plus 10% red pollen. Cool Bee gives plus 10% blue pollen, and this one gives plus 10% red pollen. Next, we're gonna go with Rascal Bee. Rascal Bee is kind of the same as the Bumblebee, and they both give different types of bomb pollen. The Bumblebee gives blue pollen, and then the Rascal Bee gives the red version of that. Next up, Stubborn Bee. Stubborn Bee here, this one was kind of hard to decide. I think it's a C tier, and it's just because this could benefit all hives. It's plus 20% ability token lifespan, so you can get to a lot of tokens in the field before they despawn, and that could be really helpful to you. And you know, it's just kind of a nice thing to have, but it's not something that you're gonna need to have. So it's just something that if you could have it, that's great, but if you don't, then it really isn't gonna affect your gameplay that much. So coming off of that one, we're gonna go into the Bumblebee. Now Bumblebee here is gonna, I think we gotta put Bumblebee in A tier, just because it has that times 1.5 pollen from bubbles. Now again, a lot of these are very situational, and this one is 100% situational, meaning this will really only be an A tier bee, you should say, to a blue hive, not to a red hive. This would be an awful bee for a red hive, but this is a great bee for a blue hive because blue hives run on bubbles, and this bee is going to really help you when it comes to bubbles. So situational bee, but if you are a blue hive, it is definitely going to be an A tier bee for you. Next is the Bucko Bee. The Bucko Bee is gonna go into the B tier, and this one also very similar to Cool Bee, gives plus 10% blue pollen, kind of self-explanatory there, I feel like. And then next up is the Commander Bee. That is an S tier bee for sure. There's actually, I think, gonna be quite a few S tiers in this video, which is kind of a good thing to know that there's a lot of really great gifted ability stats. But this is gonna give you plus 5% critical chance, critical power. Those types of stats are really gonna be what pushes you far in this game. So that bee is gonna be a great gifted ability to have in your hive. Plus 5% critical chance could do a ton for you. Next is the Demo Bee. I'm gonna stick the Demo Bee in C tier. Now it's kind of similar to the Bomber Bee. It gives plus 15% bomb pollen, actually the exact same stat as the Bomber Bee, so very similar there. Next is Exhausted Bee. Exhausted Bee, I had to think about this one for a bit. I'm thinking it's D tier because it gives plus 25% Buzz Bomb pollen, which is kind of a specific type of ability token that it applies to. It's not all of the bomb power, it's just the certain Buzz Bomb. So that one is going to go in D tier, to be fair to the other bees like Bumblebee and Rascal Bee, which are also down in that tier. So I think that's where we're going to go with for that one. Next, Fire Bee. We're going to put Fire Bee in A tier as well. This one is kind of strange. It is another one of those situational ones. It probably is an A tier bee for a red hive, because it is going to give you that 1.5 times pollen from flames, and you know, if we're using the same logic on this bee as we did the Bumblebee, then this bee should definitely go in A tier as well. So next up is the Frosty Bee. Now, Frosty Bee is also another one of the bomb pollen bees. This is going to go in D tier as well because it gives you that blue bomb pollen just like the Bumblebee. And then we have Honeybee. Honeybee was a huge talk in the very last video that I posted. So I have been thinking, and not just because a lot of you guys have been saying you wanted to see Honeybee up higher, but I think that Honeybee, I know a lot of you guys are going to want me to put it all the way up in S tier, or even higher than S tier, but to give it an honest rating, I think we got to give it A tier, because this is going to give you plus 1.5 times honey from tokens, and it's kind of like the white hive version of the Bubble Bee and the Fire Bee. It's, you know, the 1.5 times honey from tokens is really going to benefit a White Hive player, especially with abilities like Coin Scatter, which White Hive kind of uses more often than the other types of hives. So justice for Honeybee. Honeybee is an A tier. I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, Honeybee needs to be an S tier or higher than S tier, but to give it a fair rating, we're going to stick it in A tier for now. So yeah, that's it for Honeybee. Moving on, we're gonna go and talk about the Rage Bee. Very similarly to Brave Bee as well, we're gonna stick the Rage Bee in A tier because it gives that +1 bee attack, which is a great stat. Like I said earlier, it's just kind of situational, and you're not always gonna need to have attack power. You do always need to have good pollen stats, but this isn't a pollen stat, it's an attack stat, so that's why this is going to be an A tier and not higher up, even though it is a very good gifted stat. Riley Bee, I'm sure as a lot of you guys can guess, is going to go in the same tier as Bucko Bee because it gives plus 10% red pollen. Very self-explanatory there. And then we're going to move on to Shocked Bee. Now, Shocked Bee, I'm going to stick into... I'm thinking here, I'm thinking we gotta put Shocked Bee in A tier. It is kind of similar to the Riley Bee and the Bucko Bee in terms of the gifted ability giving a specific type of pollen. This gives plus 25% white pollen, but considering the other bees in the bee category just give plus 10% of the certain type of pollen, and this one gives plus 25% type of that pollen, I think that Shocked Bee definitely has to go up a little bit higher. So I think that it's deserving of A tier. Let me know though, I think this one I might have got wrong, but just let me know. I'm learning as we're going along. Next, we are gonna go with Baby Bee. We're moving into the legendary side of things. So we're gonna get the Baby Bee here. And again, I think this bee is probably B tier. Now, the stat plus 25% loot luck is great. You know, it's something you're gonna want to have, but it's not something you need to have. And it is, again, kind of an RNG based item in the game, and it does depend a lot on luck. And, you know, you could have this gifted bee in your hive. I personally have a gifted baby bee, but I really don't know if I can tell a huge difference between having a gifted baby bee and not having a gifted baby bee. It's not such a big difference to the point where it should be higher up on this list. I'm thinking B tier, possibly C tier, or, you know, it could. I don't think that baby bee could move up on the list. I think it could move down on the list, in my opinion, but I think I'm giving it B tier. I think that's a high rating, a very fair rating, but it could possibly move down on the list. Next, Carpenter Bee. Now, a lot of you guys I know are going to be really mad about this one, but I'm going to put the Carpenter Bee in F tier. Now, the Carpenter Bee is a great bee, and honestly, it has some of the best stats in the game. It really changed the mechanics of the game when it came out, but it really does not have a good gifted ability. Plus 25% pollen from tools, and you may think, especially at earlier stages in the game, that the tools help you earn a lot of pollen, and they ultimately don't really. You know, it is nice to have the highest tools because they will get you more pollen, but the thing that is going to get you the most pollen in the game is going to be your bees and how they work together. So that's why this is going to be a really low gifted ability to have in your hive. The bee itself is really great, but it's just the gifted ability, in my opinion, is not really that good because tools, yes, they are good, but they're not really going to be nearly as helpful as having a bee. So yeah, that's it for Carpenter Bee. Sorry to everybody whose favorite bee is Carpenter Bee. But next up is the Demon Bee. Now, Demon Bee here is also probably just going to go in the D tier. It's very similar to these other bees. It has the plus 25% red bomb pollen. Kind of self-explanatory considering how we scored these other bees in D tier. And then next, we're going to do Diamond Bee. Now, I know this one as well is going to be kind of controversial. Diamond Bee is an F tier in my opinion. It does have a good hive bonus of plus 100% convert rate, but hear me out here. The convert rate is only good when you're converting at your hive, and if you have your hive set up correctly, you probably shouldn't be constantly converting at your hive. You know, it kind of does depend the stage that you're at in the game, but you know, your goal of the game is trying to stay away from your hive so you don't have to constantly be converting. You want to find other ways so you can stay in fields for longer without having to always convert at your hive. And you know, you're able to get convert rate so easily in the game. From like Science Bear will give you conversion rate boosts, and just plus 100% convert rate sounds good, but you can have such a highly stacked up convert rate stat that the plus 100% convert rate really isn't going to matter that much. Diamond Bee is very good at converting. It has an amazing convert rate on its own, but the gifted ability just really isn't as good as I think it looks to a lot of people, and that's just my personal experience. But you know, let me know what you think about that one. I know some people live by Diamond Bee and they love all of the Diamond Bee stats, and they love having a bunch of Diamond Bees so they can convert at their hive really fast, and that's totally true. But it's, you know, again, staying away from your hive is kind of the goal in Bee Swarm Simulator for a lot of players. So next up here, we're going to talk about the Lion Bee. We're going to put Lion Bee up in the A tier as well, and you know, very similar logic to why we put the Brave Bee and the Rage Bee in this area, because it gives, the Lion Bee gives plus 2% colorless bee attack, which really good. Again though, the attack in the game really isn't always going to be that important. So, you know, unless you are attacking something, or if you're trying to make your amulet better, or if you're trying to make a passive better. So it is a great stat, but it's just not worthy of S tier. I think that A tier is very fair because attack is super important in the game, but it's just, you can't get as much from attack always as you can from the other stats like critical chance and higher percentages of honey, just kind of like that. So I hope that that kind of makes sense. Music Bee is going to be our next bee up to the plate, and Music Bee is going to be a B tier. Music Bee kind of fell pretty far from last video. I don't know if you saw it, but this is plus 25% pollen from bees. Again, super helpful stat, and especially bees are going to give you a lot of pollen. A lot more pollen is going to be made from your bees than it is going to be from tools, so it definitely is a great stat. I just, you know, I don't have a ton of experience with this stat personally, and I do think that it is worthy of B tier, possibly A tier, but just to kind of be fair with how the whole entire thing is set up, I just thought that B tier is probably a better place to put this one. Again though, let me know, I probably got this one wrong, but again, it's just my opinion. I'm not claiming that this is the exact rating on how every bee is ranked in the game. It's totally my opinion. Next, we're going to talk about Ninja Bee. Ninja Bee is, I don't think many people would argue with this, definitely F tier. Absolutely. I mean, I just really don't like this stat. I almost despise this stat. Plus 5% bee move speed, which is good if you're doing stick bug, and it's good if you know, are doing stuff like that, but it's really just kind of a throwaway gifted stat, in my opinion, on a lot of hives. And if you are an attack hive, this is going to be a good stat for you. But plus 5% bee move speed, it's just, in my opinion, it is not worth it. It's kind of a stat you should stay away from. It is kind of a nice stat to know that you have, so you know that your bees are a little bit faster, which will give you that edge over people that you're playing with in a stick bug, or, you know, but it just, at the end of the day, I don't think that this is the best stat. It's only plus 5% bee move speed, so I think that, to be fair to all these other bees on the list, it has to be F tier, unfortunately. Next up is the Shy Bee. So we're gonna take the Shy Bee here, and I think we should move this up to B tier. That's not the Shy Bee, this is the Shy Bee. We're gonna move this up to B tier. It's very similar to the Rad Bee and the Riley Bee. It has plus 10% red pollen, self-explanatory there. And then we have Fuzzy Bee. Now, so the mythic bees in this game are a little bit different when it comes to being gifted. Now, initially you look at Fuzzy Bee's stat and it gives times 1.1 bomb power, and that honestly isn't that great. it is a good stat that applies to all bees. So initially, going by how we rank everything else, it would be C tier, but that's not the only thing that Fuzzy Bee can do. It has the gifted ability Pollen Haze, which kind of summons a haze over the field and it pollinates a bunch of flowers, and it can really help your entire hive, really create some amazing boosts. So I think for that reason, we're gonna have to move Fuzzy Bee all the way up to S tier. Part of me thinks it could be A tier, but I think we gotta move the Fuzzy Bee up to S tier just because Pollen Haze is amazing. On top of that, you're also getting that 1.1 times bomb power, so I think that it is worthy of being an S tier. Next up here, we have the Spicy Bee. Now we're talking about all of the mythic bees right now, and much like the Fuzzy Bee, the Spicy Bee has plus 25% flame duration, which is a great stat, which by how I'm looking at it, I think would probably put it in B tier or A tier, but it also has the gifted ability Flame Fuel, which will make flames stronger. So this is an S tier bee for a red hive, for sure. But to be fair to all the other types of hives, I'm gonna put Spicy Bee in A tier, and this really does hurt me because I love Spicy Bee. I have so many Spicy Bees in my hive. I have Spicy Bee in all of my thumbnails. I think that this is a fair rating, and I'm really not trying to boost up certain bees' scores just because I like the bee. So I think that Spicy Bee is gonna have to be an A tier bee, quite honestly, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's an S tier bee for a red hive, and I think it's gonna be an A tier bee ability, gifted ability I should say, for all other. So, you know, that's where I'm gonna put the Spicy Bee for now. I might change my mind before the video ends, but I think that this is where Spicy Bee is gonna live for the rest of this video. Next is Tadpole Bee. Tadpole Bee gives you a lot of really interesting things. This bee in particular has two gifted abilities. So it has plus 10% blue pollen, which is amazing. That would in itself put it at B tier with what we're at. And then it gives plus 25% instant bubble conversion, which is really good. So by that, I would put this bee in A tier. But simply due to the fact it has another gifted ability, which is the Baby Love token, the same Baby Love token that the Baby Bee drops, I think that this is 100% an S tier bee, just because it has so many gifted stats. So it's an S tier gifted bee, absolutely. And sadly, it is better than the Spicy Bee for all of the red players out there. It's just very different if we're talking about it in that term, and especially for a blue hive, the Tadpole Bee is going to be exactly what a blue hive is going to rely on. So super important bee. Next up is Vector Bee. Vector Bee here gives plus 15% mark duration, which is a great stat. I would probably put that in A or B tier. And then it also has a gifted ability of Mark Surge. And just knowing all of this, I think that this would also go in A tier. Just because some of the bees in S tier are just a little bit higher up on my list than this, and you know, I think that this is a fair place for Vector Bee. You probably could argue and convince me to move it up to S tier, but I think that A tier is a good place for Vector Bee for now. Plus, we don't need a zillion bees up in S tier, because then it kind of just changes up the dynamic of everything else. So that is going to be an A tier bee for now. I'm actually going to adjust all of the bees in A tier to create a little bit of room because it looks a little bit messy right now. Alright guys, I just adjusted them. I moved everything around to create a little bit more room, and now we move on to the final bees, and these are all event bees. So first up here, we're gonna go with Bear Bee. Bear Bee, I am gonna move that all the way up into S tier because its gifted ability is plus 5% pollen, which is really nice to have. Definitely an amazing stat. My only complaint about all of these event bees is the only way to get a gifted event bee is by using a star treat, and star treats are super expensive. So in my opinion, some of these gifted event bees are worth less than meets the eye just because of how expensive it is to get them. But once you do have the gifted version of the event bee, it is significantly better than the regular bee, and the developer on it knows how hard it is to get gifted event bees, so he has made the stats for gifted event bees pretty good, just so you know it is worth it to try and work really hard to get the tickets, to get the star treats, to make these bees gifted. So Bear Bee is going to go in S tier. Cobalt and Crimson Bee are our next ones that we're going to talk about. In my opinion, Cobalt Bee needs to be all the way up in S tier, as well as its sibling Crimson Bee, because these bees just go together so well, and their gifted abilities are plus 10% instant blue conversion for the Cobalt Bee and plus 10% instant red conversion for the Crimson Bee. Now, this is an absolutely amazing stat. Anything instant conversion related always makes me really happy, because I know that it's pretty much free honey that you're making, and it's not going to be filling up your bag any faster. So these are great, honestly, very, very, very amazing stats to have as the gifted version of this bee. So again, perfect. Definitely deserving of S tier. It looks like we just filled up the top of S tier, so I'm gonna go shift some of these bees around. Alright guys, so I just moved all of those bees over a little bit to create a little bit more room, and we're gonna move Festive Bee up next till B tier. And the reason for this is it's plus 10% red pollen. It has the exact same gifted stat as the Shy Bee and as the Riley Bee and the Rad Bee. The only thing that makes me think that I could move the Festive Bee up to A tier is when this bee is gifted, it has a higher chance of dropping Festive Blessing. It actually has guaranteed Festive Blessing from its gift, I'm pretty sure, which is super helpful. However, the reason it's not higher up on this list is Festive Blessing is an RNG based thing, and it isn't always a stat that you're going to have active, and it's a very rare stat actually to have active. So I think it would be unfair to move it up higher on this list, even though Festive Blessing could potentially get you, trillions and trillions, if not higher, amounts of honey. It's just a very situational bee, and I think that B tier is perfectly fitting for this one, but it could move up to A tier. I don't think it's S tier. The only other tier I think I would move it up to is A tier. So moving on from there, Gummy Bee is next. Gummy Bee is going to be in S tier as well, and the reason for this is because Gummy Bee has plus 5% honey per pollen, which is another stat very similar to instant conversion, that is pretty much just going to be giving you free honey for the amount of pollen that you're collecting. And I just love this stat. It's great. It makes you feel like you're getting more of your time's worth when you're in a field, because you're getting extra honey per every single pollen. So for every one pollen that you get, you're getting 1.05 of the honey, which doesn't sound very high, but it does stack up pretty high, and with other boosts in the game, it can get pretty crazy. So Gummy Bee is definitely going to be S tier as well. If you do have the Gummy Mask, and during the Gummy Morph ability, your Gummy Bee is going to be absolutely crazy strong, and having your Gummy Bee gifted during that time is going to make it absolutely amazing, and that is also a little bit why Gummy Bee is all the way up this high on the list. However, that stat I can't really take too much into consideration, because you're not always going to have a Gummy Morph activated. It's just not realistic. But yes, Gummy Bee is an S tier bee in my opinion. Next is Photon Bee. Photon Bee, we are also going to move up into S tier because this has plus 5% instant conversion. I kind of talked about this earlier, and on top of this, if your Photon Bee is gifted as well, its Beam Storm ability is going to send all those beams down into the field, and it's going to instantly convert all of that pollen, which super helpful. It's just kind of a nice little added bonus. So yeah, I definitely think that is worth it for sure. And it again looks like we're kind of running out of space in S tier. Maybe I'm rating some of these bees too high. I'll get back to you right when I finish sorting out the rest of these, and I will then talk about Puppy Bee, which is going to be up next. Alright guys, I shifted some of these bees over a little bit more to create some more room, and next we're going to have Puppy Bee. Puppy Bee is going to be a C tier, and I know a lot of you guys are probably a little bit confused right now, but this bee is so situational. I mean, it's seriously crazy. The plus 1% bond from treats is a fantastic stat. It's really going to help you out when you're leveling up your bees, but you're not always going to be leveling up your bees every second. And you know, if you always were leveling up your bees, if this game was bee leveling simulator, this would be an S tier bee. It would be the best bee in the game, especially for its gifted stat. And it is a very good gifted stat for leveling bees. It's just not good when it comes to every single other thing in the entire game, which is a lot of different things that the game has besides just leveling up your bees. So I hope that this one makes sense where I'm coming from. I don't think I could move Puppy Bee up any higher on this list personally. If anything, I would have to move it down to D tier. I don't think it's an F tier because it is such a good bonus if you are leveling up your bees, because it could save you trillions of honey, but I have to put it in C tier. Wish I could put it up higher, but Puppy Bee unfortunately continues to disappoint, but Puppy Bee is still very good, and it has saved me a lot of time and a lot of honey when it does come to leveling up bees. So that's where Puppy Bee is going to go. Next is Tabby Bee, and you guys know Tabby Bee is one of my personal favorites. We're going to move that all the way up into S tier as well, and we're going to put this here for a couple of reasons. Now, the Looker Bee has plus 50% critical power, and this bee also has plus 50% critical power, which is great, absolutely amazing. But that is not the good thing about this bee. The amazing thing about this bee, having a gifted bee gives you just a gifted bonus on the bee, and having a gifted bonus on Tabby Bee is going to be huge, absolutely giant, because you can really make your Tabby Bee really good the more that you play with it. But the better thing that I have to say about this is your Tabby Bee has an ability called Scratch, and if the bee is gifted, then Scratch is always gonna be a critical every time that the Scratch token appears on your screen, and it's gonna get you so much honey, so much pollen, and I think that easily puts it up in S tier. Next is Vicious Bee. Now, I see so many people talking about Vicious Bee, and I think a lot of people have a very big misconception about Vicious Bee. Sometimes I read my comments and people are like, Zanprez, which bee should I make gifted first for the event bees? And I always seem to see a couple people saying, make the Vicious Bee gifted first. Now, I see where a person might be coming from because Vicious Bee is an amazing bee on its own, but I'm gonna put Vicious Bee in C tier, and I'm gonna tell you why. I love Vicious Bee. I mean, it's my profile picture, but I have to put it in C tier because all it does is it's minus 15% monster respawn time, which is helpful, but you know, unless you're going for the leaderboard trying to get a lot of battle points, it's really not that great. One thing that I do like is the spikes are yellow on the field, and the nice thing about that is you can tell, especially when you're defeating another Vicious Bee, which spikes are yours. So that is cool, but it's definitely not one of the bees that you would want to make gifted first. Probably one of the event bees that you would want to make gifted last. But gifted Vicious Bee has a very special place in my heart. I love Vicious Bee. Vicious Bee is a fantastic bee, you know, on its own. It's just, its gifted stat isn't as good as I think a lot of people give it credit for. So yeah, that's where my Vicious Bee personally is going to go for its gifted stat. It would be much higher up if it was for the bee itself, but we're not talking about the bee itself. So now, it has been a long journey. You guys have been listening to me talking for so long. So sorry about that, but finally we have come to the final bee, and this is going to be the Windy Bee. Now, Windy Bee, I am going to put up in S tier. Now, I was going between S tier and A tier for this bee for so long, but I finally decided that this bee should go up in S tier. And the reason for this is it's another one of those bees that has 2 gifted stats, and it has plus 15% instant white conversion and ×2 boosts from clouds, which is amazing. And I'm thinking the reason I should put it up here is because it has an amazing stat just like the Cobalt and Crimson bee. So I definitely think it is worthy to be all the way up in S tier here, joining the rest of the majority of the event bees. But I'm going to move all of these bees over a little bit as I'm talking. But yeah, I mean, I think that this bee is absolutely phenomenal. The bee itself is great. The event bee is super hard to get, so it is nice that it has good gifted stats. But yeah, this is kind of how my tier list is gonna go for all of the bees. I don't know if you guys agree. Let me know. I love to hear what you guys would have to say. And I like when you guys tell me that you disagree and that I'm wrong, and I like to hear why I'm wrong and kind of try to educate myself a little bit. And I hope to, educate some of you guys a little bit and kind of, just weigh in on my opinion. Obviously, you guys should form your own opinion on what bees you think are good and not, but I play the game quite a lot actually, so I do have a pretty good idea of what bees are helpful to me. And obviously I will have a few biases in my list. I tried to leave as much bias out of this video as possible, but obviously it's gonna show up, it's gonna be there. But yeah, this is how I'm gonna rate all of the gifted abilities on all the bees, not the bees themselves. I already made that video, which again is linked down in the description. Go watch that video, because the ranking looks very similar to this, but all the bees are in very different places actually. But yeah, go check out that video. Leave a comment saying that you came from this video. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Your support means so much to me. And if you did like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because it really helps me out a lot. Make sure to go join the Discord, and as well, go get yourself some of that merch if you like it. That will be linked down in the description, both of those. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.